Hey guys, Jesus here. And I recently released something which is a little calculator script program, ratio finder, whatever you want to call it, which in essence gives you ratios with timings and top aligners to get your sand and TNT exposure really close together in the barrel. The primary focus is how close they are together. You can also get ones where the velocity is almost the same or pretty close. Um, So yeah, that will be mainly used for AGs, mid-airs. You can find ones where the velocity is the same, but they're not going to be very good. So would be easier to find one with different velocities because you're going to know the velocities and the position. You can then calculate two different powers or calculate a micro exposure for one of them, which I haven't made a calculator for that currently. I might add that in the future, so it calculates you two powers to actually get them to shoot together, or calculate a micro exposure to line them up together. But I don't have that added right now. But this should still make your life a bit easier to get decently equal exposures and whatever. So I'm gonna show you how to get it, how to use it, and this tutorial is gonna require you to be a bit of a more advanced scanner, so you're gonna have to know how to use cannon debug, how to use multi-dispensers, how cannons and TNT physics and mechanics work in general, and like how to build different cannons. So like you're gonna have to be a decent canner to actually be able to use this. This is the setup I made with it, with multi-TNT in few minutes. That's a bit of an AG. Oh, this breaks. It's a bit of an AG ratio here. It's not very good. It goes up 3 blocks in one tick. Sand and TNT are on different heights when they hit here because they're not exactly synced because of the different velocities. But still, that's AG. You could overstack with this if you wanted to. So yeah, this is not the best example because it's not very good of the ratio. It uses very normal blocks and just timing. I'll get to that in a second though, how we actually get this. First I'm going to go into like where to get this. So you go to our GitHub page. Link is going to be in the description onto my GitHub page. This is there's a detailed description here. I'm going to go through this in a second. And then there's the releases here. Under latest, you're always going to find the latest one with some changes as well. Now, so what you want to do is download this zip file here. This is the build version. If you want to like build it yourself or look at the source code, you can do it in here. You can clone this, build it yourself if you know what you're doing, whatever. So, right, basically we've got the TNT ratio finder in here and the config. That's the two files you get. I'm going to copy this. I prepared a little folder here in my documents. I'm going to put these. Now there's a little how to use here, download or build, change the settings and run it, whatever. Now let's get into the config really quick. So there's a config that comes with it, with some default values that are probably not what you want. And there's some, what you want to change is these things here. So there's some different settings. There's max game tick difference, which is how far the two boosters, that sand and TNT booster, can be apart in game ticks. And now the higher this is, obviously there's more options, so you're going to get better ratios, but the velocity difference is also going to be greater since one falls for longer than the other. So you want these, so if you want the velocity to be the same, you set it to 0. If you want them really close, set it to 1 or 2, and then also allow them to fall for a long time. It's set to 3 but by default, just some random value. This is the max game tick drop, and this is how many game ticks the sand and TNT will be allowed to drop for in the barrel. So the higher this is, the more time they will have to sync up, get different ratios. So ideally you want this pretty high. I think in most scans you can manage to have them drop for 30-40 game ticks. Unless you're very specific, then you're obviously going to make it lower. So yeah, that's a thing you can modify here. Get that right. So yeah, then what you want to do is make this pretty high if you can. This starts after the first tick of those is the tick the TNT gets boosted. So the sand can always fall for a bit longer than this, depending on your difference here. This is the difference threshold, which you probably don't have to change unless the program starts using a lot of RAM or starts taking really long. You can put this lower. So this is basically how close the difference has to be, at least for it to even consider the ratio, for it to even save it. The ratio still gets sorted by the best one, so it's not gonna matter in most cases. If you get no ratios with something, you either done something wrong in the configuration, or no ratio is actually this close. So you can try moving this up and see if you get any ratios. Show ratios is just how many best ratios it's gonna show. It shows 10 by default. Then max guider difference is how many blocks apart the guiders can be. Obviously you're gonna need more. If you have like a high difference here, you're might need more. If you have a low difference here, gonna need less. Just to set to 20 right now. If you set any of these values like really high, if you set multiple of them really high, it might take a long time to calculate, so keep them as low as you can. So like, if you're gonna drop it for 3 game ticks, there's no need to enter like 400 blocks here. 10 is probably gonna be fine. That's 20 by default. Then verbose, if you set this to true, it's just gonna output a lot of the steps it takes while calculating, which is gonna slow the program down a lot, but it's just mainly for debugging, but can also help you see what's going on. If you set save to file as true by default, which means it creates or overwrites a file ratio.txt or ratios.txt, I think, which is gonna have all the ratios that you got. You can turn this off if you don't want that. I recommend having it on. So yeah, that's the default settings. So let's actually see what this looks like if you run it right now. First time running it, it's gonna tell you, yeah, unrecognized app. Obviously this app is not like verified with Microsoft or anything. I just made it like yesterday. And it's probably never gonna be unknown publisher, yeah, it's because I made this. If you run it, then you're gonna get a screen like this. If you set really high settings, you're gonna get this first and then a progress bar, which this progresses until it's done. That's gonna tell you how many like scenarios it simulated, how many iterations it did in total, how many ratios it found within your threshold, and then it's gonna tell you the best ones here. So ratio looks like this. This is the best ones with the in terms of difference. Then it also tells you some substitutes for blocks. So this is all of the ones, not only the ones that were used in the ratio. So if you see a block here, used here, that you don't like, you can look down here if it has a substitute that you like more. Some of them don't. Right now the program only has blocks that you can fully align to from the bottom. So what I mean by that is, for example, a slab, you can just align to this from the bottom. Let's say a hopper, there's actually some different sources that you can get. For example, let's say you align to this part of the hopper, this part here. Well, that's going to be really hard to set up, so I didn't include those. You can manually add them if you know how to build a program. I might add them later on, optionally. Haven't done that yet. Might do it later if a lot of people want it. Alright, let's get back to going through this. So we went through all the settings, and now it's time to actually understand what the program is telling us here. So for that purpose, I'm gonna get one of these out. I'm gonna create a new file here and paste it in. So this is a ratio 1, the best one the program told us. A lot of the top ones might be equal difference with just other guider setups. And yeah, another thing that you should know is this position of the block assumes that your sand guider is at the position of at the y level of the max difference you entered, max guider difference. So in this case 20. Doesn't really matter. You're probably just gonna want to look at the decimal points anyways to see how far it is from the bottom. So what you want to do now is, like, let's say we want to use this ratio. They're gonna be this far apart, and TNT is gonna have this y velocity while sand is gonna have this y velocity. That's a bit of a difference. You could equalize that with different size powers probably really well. Another trick to get the power like really similar, or to get like a difference to affect it really little, is to move your power back really far. Move this back a lot of blocks, right? So then the angle at which the two get affected is going to be really small, because obviously if you have the power here and you have the two here, the angle, it's going to be like this, right? But if you have the power really far back and you have your two here, I should demonstrate this with, say it like this. If you have your power here, the angle, it's going to be like this. So the difference between the velocity they get is going to be big. If you move this back further, then the angle it's going to be a lot smaller. So the difference between the velocity, y velocity they get is going to be a lot smaller. So that's why you want to move your power back in most cases, I would say, to minimize the effect. Also could give you less range, worse exposure, but that might be something you want to, that might be a compromise you want to take. Anyways, let's get into what this actually means. So this is a ratio 1, the best one I found, and this tells us when to boost our sand. So we want to boost the sand, the game tick 0, that's always 0, and then we want to boost the TNT 1 game tick after the sand. Then the guiders we want to use, for the sand we use the sideways skull, and for the TNT guider we use top, medium, amethyst. So medium, top, medium, amethyst. Medium amethyst would be that, and top meaning we put it on top of the block. I think the amethyst cluster, I didn't specify the orientation unless it's sideways. So if it says sideways amethyst cluster, it's this. If it says amethyst cluster, it's on the top. I might add that later if I don't forget. Well, let's get into the rest of this. So then there's the sand guider Y, TNT guider Y. This is going to tell you where to put your guiders. So right now, let's assume both our guiders are slabs, just for sake of simplicity. If both of them are 0, we want to put both of the guiders at the same height. If the TNT guider Y is 1, we want to put it 1 higher. If it's 2, we want to put it 2 higher. If, for some reason, that TNT guider Y is -1, then we want to put it 1 lower. So that's how that works. Then let's get back to our ratio. We have the game ticks dropped. This is after how many game ticks of dropping it's going to after how many game ticks of dropping it's going to get the ratio that we're looking for. So this difference. In this case, it needs to, after the TNT got boosted, drop 9 game ticks. Then it's gonna get this difference between them. This is the position they're gonna be at, like in relation to the max. You said you really just want to look at this because this is, if your power would be at 0, at like on a block, it would be 0 or like 18 in this case, and this then would be point that. So that's how far up it would be. So this for an AG probably pretty much useless. Because it would be 0.4 up. And then this also tells you the Y velocity the sand and TNT is going to have at the time. So those are obviously different since we boosted them at different times. So you can use that to get the power about equal or stuff like that. Now I'm actually going to try and find the ratio I have set up here in the back. So what I want to do is get the max tick difference. I set it to 1 because I want the difference to be minimal. I think I set the max tick drop to 40. The threshold, I can set that down a bit. I showed 20 ratios, I think. I can show 20 ratios or something. And just show this as well, there is now the ratios.txt, which has all those ratios we got in the previous run. So those get saved if you accidentally close it, or if you want to like copy them out cleaner or something like that. Just want to send the whole thing to someone, that gets saved by default. So then we got the max guider difference, we can leave it at that. So ratio is 20. I think that should find whatever I had. Let's run this. Usually it doesn't take very long unless you use like really big numbers. So only did the calculation like 600,000 times, which is not a lot for like a C# program that's written pretty decently, pretty efficiently. Right, so then I think I had one where it dropped it 9 and the position was really close. I think this is the one I had with full block and top slab. All right, so this is ratio 8. I'm just going to copy it out from here, put it into here. So this is the ratio we have in game right now. Let's first look at the sand booster and TNT booster game ticks. So how I got that difference here is just by multi-TNT. This is my sand booster, which is set to normal fuse, and I set the fuse on the TNT booster 1 longer. Obviously, also need to make sure these get rendered after, both of them get rendered after the booster, or both of them, well, no, they can't render the TNT before the booster. So you need to make sure both of them get rendered after the booster. Otherwise, you're gonna get tunnel ticking, which just means the sand is gonna start moving 1 game tick later. So you're gonna have, if you render this before the booster, you're gonna have to adjust for that in the booster. Then you have the power here, which goes off out at a specified time. Whatever, not important. So right now we got that difference. You can see how I set that difference up. Then obviously we get the top guiders, full block and slab. I set those up like that. Full block for sand, slab for TNT. Both of the Ys are 0, so they're on the same height. Then you can see the game ticks dropped is 9. So it's going to achieve this difference with this offset from 0 after 9 game ticks. So when I power this with 1 repeater, I got 1 repeater here for the power as well. So those are pretty much the same when these get powered. I have 1 extra tick for the TNT booster. And then I add 9 more ticks that everything needs to fall. So I get 10 ticks later, I want to have the power with this render order. So I set the fuse here 10 ticks later. Just did this with multi-TNT. Now you could also wire this, just have a 10 game tick delay or 5 resonance tick delay here. Set this the same, have a 1 game tick delay here to this booster and set this the same. That's just how I did it right now. Also, you should make sure you have enough booster so this actually goes here in 1 game tick, just for accurate results. If it's dropping for multiple game ticks, it shouldn't really matter as long as it aligns here. It can start dropping on the way as long as it's already there when you need to boost it. It shouldn't actually matter, but just for sake of like security, I made these boosters pretty big. I added 50. You can probably reduce them. That's probably fine. Right. So now we should get this position up in a block, which we can just see what the guider block is here. A block of our guiders is on is 10. In this case, it's going to assume 20 since that's what I set for the highest. So if we do this minus 10, we're going to get the actual position they're going to be at. Not I'm gonna save this, but this should be the actual positions they're gonna be at. And then now if we shoot this, you can see the effect is that AG thing I showed you before, which I think you can overstack with. We're going to test that overstacking with this in a second, all right? We're actually going to test it. But let's first get into how to verify that it actually worked and how to keep working off of it. So for that, we're going to use Canon Debug here on Crystal, which is really handy. Might port it and add it to Fragment soon. It's a lot of work. It's kind of hard, so I haven't started with it yet. I might do it soon. Well, I assume you know how to use Canon debugs. So I debugged this sand that fell in here and this TNT that's going to the wall. And now we're gonna shoot it. Let's do this. And then in our history, we should have both of them blocks here in our history. Now we're gonna go after the TNT since that's the easiest because it might exist for less ticks. Just generally easier to go after the TNT. So then we're gonna, what I do to find it really quickly, we're gonna look at the TNT velocity, which is minus 0.29. That's all we need, minus 0.29. Then we're gonna go down here and see where it starts dropping. So this is where it's still on the ground, and this is where it starts dropping. So we're going to see the position here and the velocity. Look at the y. At the bottom velocity, look at the y. So we're going to look for it where it's that exact value that we had. So minus 0.29. I'm going to click on that, we get where it is. We want to click on the tick here, which is tick 64. You can also remember that, because if you keep the TNT timing the same, it should always be the same. Tick 64 of the TNT. Now if you click on the tick, you see where both the sand and TNT are at that point. And now if you look at the head value of the sand, because that's where it gets the exposure applied, and at the Y value of the TNT, they should be really close. They should have that difference. As you can see, they do have that difference that we had specified. Then you can also see the velocity that the program gave us. This velocity, so this Y value, the sand should have a Y of 7.3, and that should be the head. So like the sand is actually going to have 7.31, the same thing. And at this point, you would already probably know it's working. If you look at TNT, has a position of 8.14, 8.14. And now we're going to look at the velocity as well, where sand is minus that. So that those values all match up. So on the next tick, so on later in this tick or early on the next tick, you want to have your power go off. So that's exactly what we do here. So if we look at tick 65, you can see those things obviously look, the Y velocity they get is still a bit different because of the velocity difference and small positional difference. But it's pretty close for how fast we found this ratio. And yeah, obviously this is the next tick where it goes to the wall. So the reason I chose this velocity in particular is because it was very close to the bottom of the block, so 0.14, which I wish I could get a closer one, then the AG would work even better. But right now this is what we're working with, so whatever, just a quick demo. So like in essence, I think I covered all of these stats now, and as we could see in Canon Debug, they match up. So now you can use Canon Debug to do whatever you would normally do with it. You could use these values in here to do whatever you would normally do with it. You could find a new value if you don't like this one. What I would recommend you do in this case, we have power of 600 here right now. What I would recommend you do in this case, if you want to get them closer, you should have two separate powers, one for sand, one for TNT, and you change the. Let's look at this here. We see that the velocity after the explosion, we see that the velocity the TNT got is greater. So you'd either remove power from the TNT or add power to the sand until they're about equal. You should just be able to add one, add one, add one. Get them pretty damn close already. I think that's the best option. That's the best option you have. Now, one last thing. I think this was a bit chaotic, this whole thing, so I hope you understood everything. So let's just get some... Let's just make sure it's gonna work. Get some multi-TNT. If you're using multi-TNT and you want to act it like a real dispenser, make sure you specify W0. I'm not sure what it means, but that's the only way I got it to work. Get this here. Now we have the 100 TNT here. Now we're gonna also get rid of... So that's our hammer, obviously. Now we're also gonna get rid of this and just throw in this thing with... And you can use multi-dispensers to dispense sand. The reason I didn't use more in the first place, or use a multi-dispenser here, is because you can't track those with cannon debug, which is annoying. So let's get some redstone, wire this up. There we go. Now this should, in theory, oversec with an AG. Now obviously this is kind of shit, but there you go. Actually got an oversecker here. Simple ratio. And you can, like I said, if you tweak with the values a bit, you look through a lot of different ratios and you add maybe different powers, micro exposures, you should be able to get this really, really clean. Clean enough for AG in any case, clean enough for midair. Probably not clean enough for midair to save you a lot of micro exposures. Probably yes. So anyways, that's a quick tutorial on how to use that ratio finder that I made. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this is useful to you. See ya.